Welcome back to the Go Have Good Sex podcast, the show where faith and pleasure finally stop fighting. I'm Angela, the Christian Sexpert, sex coach, truth teller, and your new favorite bedtime devotional. If you're ready to go deeper, check out my resources for couples and individuals, from my free 15-minute coaching consults to spicy but faith-friendly resources like the Marriage Playdate, to my Patreon, where I teach you all the things your church aunties never told you about. And yeah, you know I've got it covered with merch, journals, bookmarks, and everything in between at TheChristianSexpert.com. So whether you're here to learn, to heal, or to spice things up with scripture and sass, I'm your girl, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode, and remember, go have good sex. Hey babes, and welcome back to Go Have Good Sex, the podcast where we talk about sex, pleasure, healing, and wholeness without shame, small talk, or scented candles you didn't ask for. I'm your host, the Christian Sexpert, and today we're getting steamy. No, really, we're talking about vaginal steaming. And depending on who you ask, it's either ancient womb wisdom or a hot pile of hoo-ha hype. So today I'm bringing on someone who knows the real tea, herbs and all. All right, babes, I am here with Ashley Emery, certified STEAM and somatic practitioner. She helps to support fellow voices who have been neglected and abused in the current state of women's healthcare. Girl, don't I know it? She breaks negative or untrue stigmas around women's bodies by using natural, non-invasive, and effective methods. She's passionate about prevention of unnecessary surgeries and birth control while bringing awareness and education around true healing and reconnecting lovingly to ourselves and intimacy. I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining me, Ashley.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yes. So if you all have been following me for any length of time, you know that one of the massive pillars of my work is talking about the fact that from a very young age, women are socially conditioned to disconnect from our bodies. We live in this very disconnected state where it's you got your first period and you have debilitating cramps, pull an Elsa, conceal, don't feel, you still have to go to school. And so when we get to the bedroom, it's no wonder that we have this epidemic of women who don't know how to orgasm, because putting aside all the other mitigating factors that contribute to the orgasm gap, if you are continually disconnected from your body in an effort to avoid pain, you can't suddenly reconnect when it's time to experience pleasure. So we have to live in a more connected way with our bodies. And steaming is one way to help establish that connection between getting out of your brain and into your body. So let's start with, I know people already, I myself, little known fact, am a crunchy mom. help to run a group of 14,000-ish crunchy moms. And so, and one of my dear friends is a midwife whose response to every malady in my life is some sort of grass water, aka tea, or herb, or steaming, vaginal steaming. And I side eye her a lot, and I resent it when her remedies work every time. But they work every time. And so I know a lot of people right now who are not on the same crunchy path that you and I are completely confused right now because they're like, what the heck is vaginal steaming? So what is it?
That is the most common question I get asked, and for valid reasons. It's not very well known here. However, it's actually a really ancient practice. It's something that's been around since Mayan abdominal healers. Different cultures around the world still practice it actually to this day. They have it part of their healthcare system and in their hospitals for valid reasons. And essentially, if you get to the bare bones of it, it's exposing your pelvis to a giant T, and you're using the therapeutic properties of the steam, which is everything from light detoxing, detoxification of your cellular tissue states, moving your lymphatic system, really helping to open up the pelvis from a muscular state as well. So you have your muscles are going to open. Everything in your pelvis is a lot of suspended organs. So making room and space for those as well. But using that steam to increase circulation and bring vitality to the pelvis, which of course is a whole sensation we don't ever get to experience or have, like you said, we're not familiar with a lot of touch or sensations. We are cut off. We don't look at it, don't talk about it until there's a problem down
Yes.
there. So that's the beauty of steam. It's a gentle, non invasive way to bring a connection and health benefits all wrapped in one.
It makes sense to me because even in non-crunchy communities, right? Before I ever discovered a crunchy way of life, right? I remember I have terrible allergies. I remember an allergist telling me to get hot, steamy water and sit my face over the hot water with a towel over my head to hold all the steam, inside the towel to help clear my lungs out because I had chronic like sinus infections, lung infections from my severe allergies. And so doctors telling me to use steam to clean my lungs out. So it makes sense that it works from the other end too, right?
Yeah,
Or
totally.
yeah, or people will do steam their face for, like
Facials,
facials and things like that. So,
full body sauna steams for
yes,
detoxing. And then you've got both the reproductive organs are also very mucous membrane in the same way that your respiratory tract is. So that's why there's such a beautiful link between that analogy of taking that hot shower when you've got congestion or cold, and being able to release the mucus and increase your circulation that way, focusing that into the pelvic area, which tends to be very tight, tense. We wear a lot of tight clothes. We suck in our tummies when we walk. A lot of different factors play into why circulation and tissue states are just too stagnant down there.
we are sitting at desks for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then we come home and we sit on our couch. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of stagnation in your pelvic region. Okay, so I need to know, you touched on it like a tiny bit, but um, I need to know if you have like an actual knowledge of the first sort of like where steaming sort of first showed up. Like who is the first woman that thought, you know what, instead of drinking this tea, I'm gonna sit on it?
So, from what we've gathered, so where I got certified, we tend to collect a lot of data. So, we all kind of pull together from all around the world and share not only our experiences, but things that we find in literature, what's kind of being talked about in different herbs and traditions that are used in different cultures as well. And some of the older things that we've found is especially around Egyptians and using steam therapy first, and then also smoke medicine. So it coming about in, especially in indigenous cultures, with smoke medicine coming first, before they introduce the steam. And so there are cases too where I'll recommend sometimes dry steam therapy using the power of just heat and warmth, paired with a particular herb for just dry steaming, then incorporating like the water and the more wet steam in that sense too. So there's the different variations that kind of go per region. And that's kind of what we see is every part of the country or the world has not only their own adaptation for it, but their own way of almost honoring it as a ceremony in a type of way to honor women. A lot of times, men are actually in charge of preparing the herbs or the steam water for like after their wife has a baby or things of that nature. So it's a collection of different stories and different ways that cultures have adapted the therapy to heal each other.
I love that. And now I need to ask because we have a long established history of modern American evangelicals being terrified of that which it does not understand, which the church does
Mm.
not understand, and therefore condemning it. And so I know a lot of people have heard, like ancient Mayan practice, ancient Egypt, and now they're say, oh, this is Western, like this is Eastern medicine. This is, Mayans, or, like they were into witchcraft. And because a lot of Christians, I think, I've said it on the podcast before. Actually, the quote originates with Ashley, a different Ashley Hudson, who says that Christians really love the binary thinking, the black and white, that's not really great at nuance. So the question is steaming okay for modern Jesus loving Christians?
I love that you bring this to light because there's an intentionality behind the practice. And what I especially love to help women discover is what feels good for you and for your body and your beliefs and how you interpret the world, because that's super important, right? And there's a lot, like you said, those trigger words of because it's been around for so long. However, the basis, the bones, breaking it down to an herb, a plant, and water. Those two beautiful things are elements made by God, our Almighty Creator Himself. It's how and what you put into the intention behind it. So, like for myself, I am very careful of where I source herbs from, how they're cultivated and what manners that they're cultivated, but also prayer over them, prayer before you get over the steam themselves to set the intention behind it. It's almost like there's so much things in the world, but if it's used for bad intentions, if it's used in a way that's not conducive to God's original design, there's always, consequences or negative feelings or things like that that come into it, but you get to create what you need in that moment with a particular herb and the water itself, which you can just, ask for prayer, ask for blessing, ask for to surrender the session to Him in that way, to make it your own and to ask for revealing or to move through emotions or feelings that need to be brought to Him in general. So just like most things that have been around a long time, the world can get a hold of it and have that sense of fear, but that's not the spirit we've been given. And we're always told not to conform to the patterns of the world, and we can reclaim them. And He gives us that authority to take His beautiful plants, His beautiful healing properties, and make them our own, and in a way that's intentionally pure and good for our bodies, that for their natural intention.
Yes. I really like to point out that God is capable of redeeming anything for His glory. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if you are someone who might historically be very wary of Eastern medicine or things like that, like don't dismiss something just because you don't understand it yet, or and remember that God can redeem anything. So in that same sort of like vein, what are some of the common misconceptions or like objections that you hear about steaming?
I would say the top ones have to do with disturbing the pH balance or disrupting
Mm.
your vaginal microbiome. And the counter to that is always a resounding that's not introducing something that's not already there, if that makes sense. Like the steam itself can't produce a whole new, like a bacteria that's been stuck in there. And so, this idea that there's a shift or a change that's going to, that wasn't already present or laying dormant or out of whack or out of imbalance already. I think that's one of the biggest ones because it's so detoxing and so cleansing in its nature, that it's more of bringing to light what should already be resolving or having to find solutions for. So that's not, there's always typically when they have that kind of argument, it's okay, well, there's so many different pieces to it. We got our gut microbiome and how are we, what are we wearing? Are we wearing cotton underwear? Are we being too restrictive? Are we cleaning it properly, using the wrong soaps? The laundry detergent makes a difference. So that I've never seen that in my experience, and I've been
What
certified
kind of
since.
menstrual products are you using?
Exactly. Yeah,
Like
there's
some
tends
of
to be so many other factors to that argument that um, the idea that water could somehow imbalance something that was already kind of there is a big one. And then burning. a lot of people will be opposed to it because they think it's hot or it's a danger to burning their bodies or themselves. And there's never been an instance where I don't instruct someone to like test it with your forearm first and just see
I feel
how
like
that
this is like
feels.
common sense. Like, I feel like this is like a common sense issue.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't like strip and sit on
On a
something
boiling water. Yeah. And at no point is the water
without
boiling
like
when you're over the
knowing.
steam. Yeah.
Like, I just like instinctually, I feel like I'd be like putting my hand over it to
Correct. Yeah.
like,
And
do y'all
when
just like get in the bathtub without testing the water first? Like,
exactly. Yes. So there's that aspect too, because at no point should the water be boiling when you're over the steam. So the risk of actually burning is very, very rare unless, you're not testing or checking for safety things in that sense. Those tend to be the biggest ones. But ultimately, anybody, especially in medical field, who have had opposes or speak out against steaming, when they've been interviewed or talked to, or in my case, I'll personally ask other doctors and health professionals, they've never tried it. And so that's the
it's
biggest.
almost like the evangelicals who condemn that which they don't understand.
Yes, they have not had an experience with it to really fully understand. They take the concepts, but they haven't personally had that experience with it. So, yes, hot water on its own can be dangerous. Introducing different herbs or steaming too frequently for your tissue state or things like that could cause irritation, of course, just like with anything. However,
Having sex too often is going to cause tissue
exactly.
irritation.
So it's like, but putting those together and doing it with guidance and understanding, that's when the magic happens. So
Yes. Okay. So, what are the actual benefits of steaming then?
the top one that I see is pain relief because we tend to be conditioned to think that menstrual cycles, and just like painful sex, all of that is part of something we should endure. When in fact, when your cervix is in the right place, when you've got proper circulation, you won't have cramps, and all of those pieces, when you introduce the steam and the circulation to it, removes the pain. And so that tends to be the top benefit that I see a lot of clients for is pain relief. And then reproductive disorders is pretty big on the list because there's not many options for them. So women who are diagnosed with PCOS or fibroids or cysts, any internal, external, fissures, things of that nature, all kind of fall in that category of needing some detoxing because a lot of that tends to be trapped toxins, trapped emotions, things that lymphatics that are kind of backing up in there all need to be flushed out and kind of moved through. And we don't have a lot of sources for how and why we have these things. And steaming is a beautiful way to get on a cellular level and a tissue state level to push and move gently the pelvis to detox and get healthy in that state.
So, with all of that, are there people that shouldn't be steaming?
It's very rare that you shouldn't be steaming. There's definitely times when it's not advised, like when you're already currently bleeding, because it increases circulation, so you don't want to bleed more. But there's also cases where you have an IUD, or if you have like your tubes tied, surgeries, things like that, because it releases and cleanses so well, it's actually has risk to dislodge an IUD or to break up that scar tissue around your tubes or things like that of that nature. So it's more of making sure that those things that can be cleared out don't get out that way.
The things that you want to stay, stay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we've kind of alluded to the fact that this is pardon me, tea you sit on. You make a tea
Hmm.
and you sit on it. But what is the actual, like, I feel when I first heard of steaming, I struggled to conceptualize. I was like, okay, I get it. It's tea you sit on, but like how? Um, so can you break down for us like
Yeah,
how you actually do this?
right. So it's funny you mentioned that because I've been asked to like, do you use a steam wand or do I sit with a bag over
Oh
me
my
or
gosh,
things like that?
now I'm
Like a
pic
garment
like
bag, yeah.
well, like I got a garment bag for like or like I got a garment steamer for my last
Hmm.
conference to steam the wrinkles out of my clothes from traveling. So now I'm thinking, are people thinking that we're like getting
Yes.
garment steamers and putting like, oh.
Yes, I've been asked that.
And then are you going to like mark that vaginal use only? Like you're
Yes,
gonna
you might
have one
have
for your
to.
clothes and one.
So I have been asked that question. So that's always a really good one on the logistics. How does it work? You don't need special equipment. However, like in my office, I do have a steam sauna. And so when you have your pots of herbs, right? And what's beautiful about that piece in general is these herbs are picked for your body, for what you've got symptom wise going on, for your tissue states. All of that's important. And then you can kneel, you can squat, you can get on all fours, or you can put like two chairs together, the two seats together, and leave an opening, and you can have the pot underneath you. And wrap your bottom half with a blanket or a towel. The thicker the blanket, the heavier that the steam will stay in, but it's all about containment on the bottom half of your body. There's also options where you can sit at the edge of a chair or your bed and put the steam pot underneath you, and again, with your bottom half wrapped to trap the steam to the bottom there. And then you can also get like a bowl, a stainless steel bowl or a glass bowl, and put it in the toilet. And you could put the prepared herbs in that and sit on the toilet to expose it's all about how that's easiest and safe for you to expose your pelvis to the steam. So there's a variety of different methods to get that across without a steam sauna, or you can go online and search for like a vaginal steam sauna, which is basically like a box with a cutout. It could be circular or triangular, where you put the pot inside of that box, sit over that hole that's on the top, and everything's already contained for you. And then you're exposing your vulva to the steam that way too.
So I am thinking about the because I am primarily a sex coach, a sex
Mm-hmm.
educator. And so I am thinking about this piece of equipment that I have recommended for women who want to be on top and but may struggle with like their knees or their hips.
Mm,
And so it's like a little bouncy stool. And so I'm actually going to send you a link for it. And I'm going to have you say whether this would be a good piece of equipment for steaming. Because also, like, I personally, my house is tiny. I don't like to have single use items. So if
right.
this was a thing that could be used for steaming and for fun times with my husband later, like, oh, now it
Why
has
not?
dual purpose. But because I'm definitely going to send you the link and have you say yes, this would work for steaming. And if it does, guys, check, and I'll tell you guys in the listener notes of the episode. If it works, you will get the link for it in the notes of the episode. Um, because this is just how my everything people tell me about, I'm like, but can I figure out a way to tell people to use it for sex? Is
Hmm.
how my brain works. So,
No, that would be awesome. That would be, I would love to see that. There's also
yes.
that made me think of like squatty potties. Those
Yeah.
work really well for steaming too, as like multi-purpose items that you can have around as well.
So there's also, oh gosh. So I did warn you, like we would probably go off script at some point because I do typically send my podcast guests like a list of questions and then my brain just thinks of things and then I just have to follow it. But
Yes.
there's also a piece of sex equipment called a queening chair. And I have a video
Mm,
about how to use a queening chair in my private Patreon community. But the basic idea of a queening chair is it is a chair with a hole cut out of the seat and
perfect.
then the there underneath of it, there's usually a strap so that a woman can sit on the chair and the man can lay between her legs under the chair to eat her out. And that strap helps support his head so he doesn't fatigue as easily. And I like this whole time, I'm like, y'all could just get a queening chair and stick a ball
Yes.
under it.
100%. 100%. A little bowl, a little towel, blanket.
Yep.
It's brilliant. And like you said,
That too.
it's such good before prep as well,
Yeah.
steaming,
Oh, you can
because
do steaming before sex.
100% because it'll already increase your circulation. So your vulva will already start to engorge because of the warmth and the steam. And that kind of opens you up like a little flower. And that's what makes steaming so beautiful. But yes, you'll
So if a
increase nectar, all of that beautiful stuff just from the circulation.
if a woman is struggling with like low libido, would steaming be a good way to help increase her desire then?
It's definitely helpful because it's a gentle sensation that you've never felt before. So it's something that'll get you excited in that realm.
We
But
love novelty.
also the relaxation part, because that tends to be what gets us all wound up is our pelvis. We just kind of clam up a little bit. And so steaming helps all those pelvic muscles to relax. And then your muscles are relaxed, and that includes all that circulation so that you'll have better sensation, and all that blood flow will make everything feel a lot more beautiful, softer. You already feel kind of in the mood and more flexible, because everything's kind of already opened up in that pelvic region.
So then, one of the things that I see a lot is women who are struggling to orgasm. Would you say that steaming could help women with if they're the type who struggle to orgasm as well?
Based on what we've seen with how steaming is interacting with the uterus itself. So we have a lot of data, a collection of data as far as steam being able to penetrate and touch the cervix. And we've noticed that by a release of oxytocin through breastfeeding moms, when if they're steaming while they're lactating at any point in time, they'll actually have letdowns through the sensation of the steam. And so this is letting us know
Okay.
from a biological standpoint that steam is creating sensation and touching that cervix, releasing oxytocin. So getting to orgasm, getting to sensations happens a lot easier just through opening and relaxing through the steam in that way.
I love that so much. I actually, one of the questions was, is there a blend that could help a woman's libido? And so, but that also leads back because I took us down a completely different path. But one of the things that I wanted to ask was like, okay, so we've explained, how you actually do the mechanics of it, but how do you know what are the right herbs to use?
Ultimately, if you're in a pinch, like if you're traveling or something like that, it's normally safe to just kind of grab like oregano or thyme or things like that around you if you're traveling or something like that. However, it's super important to try and find a practitioner that you can connect with who has some understanding of the nature of how steam interacts with the tissue states in the body. Because, say, if you have, for example, an infection that's hot in nature, right? It's kind of itchy, it's red, it's got these symptoms of heat. We wouldn't want to use herbs that are also hot in nature. So, being able to pair with someone who has some information on that is always helpful. But like I said, there's always things like in a pinch that tend to be very safe and usable. I would say rosemary is usually easy to have on hand, lavender, calendula, and nettles. These are all herbs that tend to be pretty baseline, don't change tissue states at a very drastic rate, and can be safe for most people if you're in a pinch or have an itch or a smell or want to get frisky with your husband. like randomly. There's usually something around your house that you can grab or use in that sense. But ultimately, it's always nice to just get a second pair of eyes on what you're experiencing and what's kind of going on within your body so that you're working with the system versus going against, like I said, that hot nature versus a hot herb. You could intensify that heat. So it's always good to just check in and get a sec.
So am I hearing that like I could just go grab the rosemary and thyme out of my spice cabinet? Or is it better to, because I know part of the services that you offer is like you sell the herbs themselves, the blends, and that you ship them across the US um,
Yes.
to people. So could I just grab what's in my cabinet or should I be ordering special blends?
I find that the special blends work better for the results that you're looking for because we're all so different and we've got a lot of different things going on. So I've got like four key herb blends that I go to that tend to go with a particular person's constitution. And that helps them to, like I said, work with the herbs versus kind of just guessing or playing the best roulette that you've got around. So there's a definite benefit to that, but also sourcing makes a huge difference in like the energetics of the plant and also the preparation of how it's made. So like my blends, it each plant that's incorporated is not just for the uterus. It helps with your blood or your kidneys or your spleens because there should be something in the blend that addresses the body as a whole because we're not just that one piece of our body. There's multiple pieces all working together, and I like to have herbs that mirror that and to support the body in that way. So I find that to be the most beneficial way, but also, like I said, the intention behind it. So I always pray over my mixing as I'm blending or for a particular person for what they're going through because prayer does, in my opinion, make a huge difference on how the body absorbs it and what it can be used with and how it can bless somebody to feel better. So
So, my next question is, what would you say to someone who was raised in purity culture and is uncomfortable with any sort of sexually related self-care?
that definitely comes back, I think, around to that idea to not conform to the patterns of the world. And the pattern that I see many of women can get stuck in is this idea that we are built like men and should behave like men and act like men. And when it comes to our bodies, there's a huge gap in understanding that we are different in a beautiful way. We don't have a 24-hour hormone clock like men. So we should not be obligated to go, go, go all the time. Like that makes a huge problem or issue with how especially our reproductive and sexual beings, kind of come into play. But embracing the idea that we're not meant to kind of conform to those ideas and that we have an opportunity to really come into a space of worthiness and empowerment of what we offer that is both different but beautiful all at the same time, that we're allowed to take pause and investigate how we feel and why we feel the way that we do and letting that be expressed and making the space for that because we are beautiful daughters at the end of the day and the father would want us to feel love and compassion for ourselves, just as he does for us, to give that to ourselves. And I think that we have such giving spirits that we overgive a lot of the time and we
Mm.
don't make space to really understand how we feel, why we feel, and what our bodies do. So my invitation to that type of almost shame that we'll have with us is the invitation to just learn about your body because that tends to be the first step. Can you look at yourself? You know, can you take a mirror down to your vulva and look at what God created? You know, trying to just enter a space with curiosity and love before just, you know, shutting down or closing off. I think that's a huge piece to that is just a curiosity is a beautiful first step, I think.
What's coming to mind for me is sort of a lot of the different pieces of the conversation we had, where because you had mentioned that in some cultures, men are responsible for preparing the steam for like their postpartum wives or things like that. And I was editing a video, a different, very, very different video for my private Patreon community. But part of what I talked about in that video was ritualizing sexual encounters can help train your brain to anticipate pleasure. And so I'm thinking that if, because a large segment of the people who follow me are following me because, you know, this is the sex ed that we should have got. Purity culture caused so much damage. I hear all the time, I'm not a Christian anymore because of the damage of purity culture, but, you know, if I had had you, maybe it would have turned out different, that sort of thing. And so many women who come to me for coaching and things like that are experiencing vaginosis and purity culture trauma related sexual dysfunction. And I really like to talk to my private coaching clients about ritualizing sex for a wide variety of reasons, because rituals help our brains anticipate what is coming. And when you ritualize I'm not saying you have to have sex the same way every single time. That would get boring. You guys know me, I'm a huge advocate for novelty in the bedroom. But when you ritualize a part of your sexual encounters, you are training your brain to switch over to the pleasure center, you know, and that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. But I'm thinking, um, creating a space where a husband and wife can participate in steaming together, where he helps her prepare the herbs, helps her prepare the seating situation, whatever that may be, and sits with her, and, they talk and they can connect while the steam is doing its thing. Like, I'm thinking that would be such a beautiful ritual for anticipation of pleasure and building those connections in not only like in the marriage, but in your brain for
Mm,
pleasure and things like that. So that is just my
yeah.
personal tangent on
But
that
I mean,
subject.
you made a really beautiful point because all of that ties back to safety and what we
Yes.
don't feel. We
Yeah.
don't feel safe in that type of culture, and we don't feel safe in, you know, just normal everyday life most of the time.
Yes.
And so I think that ritual part of it is a beautiful way to create that safety. And like you said, that connection, but and to add to that, men can steam too. There's wonderful benefits to men steaming as well. So a couple's steam together is always something that's on the table, and something
I have to
beautiful.
touch on, okay, I need to come back to the men. Like that had not even occurred to me. I need to come back, but I need to touch on the safety portion of it because we are, my purity culture victims especially feel shame for being sexual at all, right? Like sexuality was just a no-fly zone at all, and so they really struggle to engage with their own sexuality. But then they have the flip side of that is the shame that they are not sexual enough for their husband, right? Because they're getting because purity culture messaging really just is the precursor to obligation sex messaging. And you have to keep him satisfied or he's going to look at porn, or oh, he cheated, why weren't you having more sex with him, right? They are feeling ashamed of the sexuality that they do express, but they're also feeling shame that they aren't sexual enough, potentially, right, for their husbands, even if he may have never expressed any sort of sentiment to that effect. But I think having a husband who would participate and presently engage in that sort of ritual creates safety in a lot of different ways, because it also tells her that she is safe to be just as sexual as she wants to be, and she doesn't have to be more or less sexual to keep him happy, that he loves her for where she is on her journey. And I think that that is a really intensely important but never discussed part of the conversation about female sexuality, especially in the context of purity culture and obligation sex messaging. Okay, tell me about men steaming. What?
Well, there's nothing more disarming, to be honest, than exposing your genitals to steam. There's nothing more disarming in that moment. So the safety and the pure like connection that comes from that, I think sharing that in the moment was absolutely beautiful. Um, but yes, men steam. They steam for a variety of reasons, whether that be pelvic tension, hemorrhoids, fissures. I've steamed men who've had vasectomies and needed help with swelling or things of that nature needing to happen. And then there's sometimes that for, like I said, that emotional space of men trying to connect to who they are in their core. Nothing disarms a man and brings them back down to earth than a little steam session to expose themselves in that way. So there's a beautiful, quite a few. There's
I,
surprisingly quite a few male gynecologists that do steam in the world, and hearing their experiences
that's
are
so
beautiful. And I've
much.
steamed quite a few men. Yeah.
But okay, so I first of all need to make explicitly clear, people, I know that we only ever hear about a woman's pelvic floor. Men
Huge.
have pelvic floors too. No one told you before. You,
Mm-hmm.
as a man, have a pelvic floor. The muscles that you use to orgasm are the muscles in your pelvic floor. And a complete side note, if you are a man who struggles with not lasting long enough, gaining more awareness and control over your pelvic floor muscles can help you last longer. And if y'all want an episode dedicated to that, um, I actually have a company that has an FDA approved medical device that teaches men to identify the muscles in their pelvic floor. But that's a whole other topic. But on I'm leading to a question. I really am. Can steaming help men with either going too fast, or if men are struggling to get an erection or maintain erections? Can steaming potentially help with those specific issues? Because I get that question all like, either I go too fast or I can't maintain the erection. I get that question so often.
Yes. In my experience, personally, steaming men, it's has to do with their connection to themselves and their bodies, right? It's almost similar to how we need that safety and that understanding of our muscles and ourselves. Men really exceed at that when it comes to steaming and feeling that sensation and honing in on that. That is huge for them to not only experience what it feels like to have those muscles relaxed and coming into the presence of themselves and that sensation, but also just the sheer vulnerability it takes for a man to agree to that. I think that's a huge step just in general to get to that space to kind of disarm, and that makes huge shifts all on its own. But yes, there's definitely, and I typically pair it with internal herbs like tinctures to take in combination with the steam practice too, because you're bringing a physical sensation and then bringing vitality to the tissues internally to kind of combat
I need you
at the
to
same time.
clarify, because we are talking about things reaching internally and we're talking about the pelvic floor region. Typically, tinctures are orally, right?
Yes,
Before
yes,
anybody freaks out.
right, yes.
Tissues are typically
Not
taken
enemas.
orally.
Yeah,
I just want to clarify for people
yes.
who got a little scared there for a second. Because I know some of you did. I know some of you did.
Orally, internally.
Yes.
Tinctures.
Yes.
Yes.
We are running up against our time. But I really want to know, what is one thing that you wish every woman knew about her vagina?
I would say the one thing that I would want women to know is that she is so expressive of your internal state. Everything from your menstrual cycle, so the colors of your blood, the textures of your blood, when your bleed comes, is all a beautiful expression of how things are going internally with your hormones and tissue states in your body. But also, it's an expression of your emotions. So, a lot of times, people that are suffering with chronic infections, anything in that realm, even if your body doesn't like a man that you're with, it'll tend to express itself through your vagina. You'll have a different odor, or you'll have a different, it's such a good temperament for how you're feeling. And I always like to share that with women because it never lies. It always has truth to tell you. And if you're with the wrong person, if you're not expressing your emotions or your feelings, if you're not taking care of yourself or nourishing your body, it expresses itself. And that's a huge piece for women, is it that's where it's going to show up first, especially when it comes to relationships. And so I wish women understood and were open to that a little bit more, to trust that when things show up physically in their womb space or their pelvis, or it's a good sign that something's going on that they need to look at from a different
Yes.
perspective.
Yes. My friend Nat, she was in episode 2 of the podcast talking about marital coercion. I just saw she had posted yesterday or today that she had chronic UTIs and her marriage was 20 years of sexual coercion. And she has not had a UTI in the 2 or 3 years since getting out of her sexually unsafe marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a myriad of other physical ailments as well, which we do cover in episode 2 of the podcast. So go back and listen to that if something that was just said really clicked for you. So go back and listen to that. Okay, but I also like now I really need to know, do you ever hear from like a husband's feedback on their wife's steaming? Like, why does the bedroom smell like sage and salvation?
um, I think I see both. I think I see both, that men are curious and inviting for their wives to have this practice, and then on the other hand, they're very respectful on it being like their time. Like, they'll step up and be like, I got the kids, you need to go take
Yes.
your steam and take care of yourself and make it a part of that. And so I love to see the dynamic of both of them, is, you know they're both curious but in a different way, and both supportive, and just making sure that they're getting cared for. And sometimes they want to know about it and they want to understand it. And then other times they're like, that's you, babe. Like, you can have this for you. But like you said, I always encourage them to have the conversation around it, for that opportunity for connection, like you said, for them to share it in that way. And I always recommend, like, he can prepare it for you if you would like to make it like a team effort, or things
Yes.
like that. So,
I feel like vaginal steaming is so far down into the crunchy woman sort of rabbit hole that by the time a woman has reached the point where she's like, I'm gonna make this tea and sit on it, that the
mm-hmm.
husband's like, yeah, that, whatever, that tracks. Nothing is
It
gonna
makes
shock
sense.
me anymore. Nothing's
Yes.
gonna shock me. I distinctly remember the first time when I really started to get into more natural remedies. My husband had burned himself on the like fry basket at McDonald's because he was working part-time at McDonald's. He had like 3 jobs and one of them was McDonald's. And I was like, oh, let me put some oils on that. And he rolled his eyes and was like, whatever. Because normally he
Hmm.
would just, I'm a man, I don't need that sort of
Put
thing.
some dirt on it.
Yeah, spit on it, it'll be fine, you know? Um, but it cleared the burn up in, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. Like, should not have cleared up that quickly, but it did because I was persistent. And so then it became, what sort of witchcraft are you doing, woman? And now he again burned himself. Yesterday we were making skewer barbecue skewer things, and like the very, very smart man he is, just grabbed a metal skewer with his bare hands and
Oh,
realized that's hot
oh,
when it's on the
no.
grill. Got himself really bad on his thumb and forefinger. And so I've been doing homeopathic water remedies, putting homeopathic remedies into his bottled water and making him sip on it for the last, 24 hours. And he burned himself on hot metal and has no pain today,
Mm,
because he's taking these homeopathic remedies. And at this point, he's just like, yeah, that
just
he's
give it
like,
to me.
he's like, last night, he's like, will you make me some remedy water to take to work with me tomorrow? Because he knows that
Mm.
my, crunchy, goofy hippie ways actually work. I also, for my viewers that are like, oh, she's done gone off the deep end now. Like, this is too much. I was fine with the vibrators, but this is look, y'all, if I did not believe in this sort of thing, and if I did not firmly believe that, if nothing else, like if you see no, I hesitate to use the word medical because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm trying to give you medical advice. I guess I'll put that disclaimer out there. This is not medical advice. Like, y'all are in charge of your own medical choices. I don't want to be a part of your medical choices. Um, Even if you don't see any health benefits to vaginal steaming, try it for the connection between your brain and your body. Because if there is nothing else that you guys take from this podcast, it is that you can live more connected to your body. You can live more connected to your pelvic floor. And when you live more consistently connected to your body and to your pelvic floor on a daily basis, you will have a better sex life. As Ashley said, if you listen to what your pelvic region is trying to communicate to you, that you are overly stressed, that you are tired, that you're getting chronic infections, if you pay attention to those things and you take care with things like steaming and other self-care practices, you will have a healthier sex life, but also just a better sort of holistic you as well. So please, okay, so now we've got listeners who are like, okay, I'm gonna try the crazy ladies suggestion because Angela's always telling me to do crazy things, but she's usually right. So if someone wants to get a blend from you or talk to you and figure out what kind of herbs that they would need to use for a blend, whether they are facing something like vaginismus or they're dealing, I know I have someone who's dealing with chronic BV,
Mhm.
um, or PCOS and all of those sorts of things. Or she just wants to try and help her libido. She wants to try and have more or better orgasms. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you and get all the good stuff?
The best way is typically through a free consult. So I do a free 15 to 30-minute consultation depending on questions or your history, what we're going through to work with together. And then I can be reached through text or a phone call, or you can schedule that through my website as well. So that's always a really easy way to get in touch to get that free consultation.
And all of that information will be in the show notes. And Ashley, thank you so much for being here and giving us all of the steamy details.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me.
All right, y'all, go have good sex. If you're curious to explore your own sexual healing, intimacy, or sacred embodiment, check out my sex journal at www.TheChristianSexpert.com. And while you're there, grab a Go Have Good Sex sticker to slap on your laptop, water bottle, or prayer journal. As always, I love you, I see you, and I hope you leave this episode a little more curious, a little more powerful, and a little bit more turned on to who God created you to be. That's it for today's episode. You've been blessed and probably slightly scandalized. Now, go journal, go text your man, and most of all, don't keep this to yourself. Share it, review it, slide into my DMs. Then grab a journal, a game, or a coaching spot. And remember, Jesus didn't die for you to have boring sex. So go have good sex already.